Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bucket Bros. We are excited to
What
be
up?
back. NBA season is back. I'm Ronnie. Let's see if I can I did it right. That's Bobby.
It's me.
I gotta point the opposite way. Uh, we hope you guys were able to catch some games, even if it was one or two. Otherwise, I'm sure plenty of you saw some highlights on the social medias. But yeah, we are excited that basketball is back. Bobby, any quick words to get started?
I'm with you. First week was a lot of fun to watch. Some surprises, some not so surprises. We're certainly going to jump into it one by one for you folks.
All right. Yeah, let's get into it. This is Fast Break News. We got some quick hitters we want to touch on, and then one little special topic that we want to kind of get into, which we think is kind of funny. I think the first big one that I will send it over to you is that Steph Curry got injured. So what happened with that, and how long might he be out for?
Yeah, so Steph ended up rolling his left ankle a couple times. Just a little inversion injury. Nothing that we're unfamiliar with Steph Curry. We all know that he has that ankle history, but essentially he tweaked it while he was trying to get around a screen. Knew he had to sit for a little bit. Started working it out. Came back into the game in the fourth quarter and almost immediately rolled the same ankle and then went straight to the locker room. It seems as though he underwent an MRI, which doesn't show any structural damage. Probably just going to be well, they're calling it a muscle strain at this point, but he'll be reevaluated on Friday. That actually goes along with his teammate, Anthony Melton, who's going to be reevaluated on Friday. Also undergoing an MRI of his back, which they're just calling muscle strain. Hopefully, he won't be out for any significant portion of time because this Golden State Warriors is definitely dependent on their number one player being out there.
Yeah. And I'm frozen. So much for me trying to look up stats. I was trying to see where when their next game was. So if he is getting reevaluated on Friday, does that mean he might miss a game or two?
Ooh, they got a back-to-back coming up, both against the Pelicans.
So ESPN says he'll miss at least 2 games. I guess that's maybe good for Wiggins and any other guards that might be filling in behind him. Who is their backup point guard? Put you on the spot without looking at the roster.
Well, Pajemski's obviously gonna fill in some minutes there, but
Obviously.
it's unfortunate that you didn't know.
What was the name? Well, obviously, so and who?
Well, Brandon Pajemski, who's essentially their starting point guard this year. But yeah, he's going to fill in some minutes, and then Anthony Melton is I guess sort of like their backup combo guard, but he's currently injured as well, and as I mentioned, going to be reevaluated on Friday, similarly. So a team that was really dense in the backcourt in terms of their depth is suddenly looking very thin, which is not it's not really good for the structure of their team in general.
Yeah. One of the other quick ones we want to hit on is the Nuggets are surprisingly 0-2, and I think you might be watching the game currently. And are they still down with the Raptors right now, going out to go 0-3? What is going on in Denver?
Yeah, the Westbrook experiment once again seems to just be not working, at least at first. They are naturally losing their bench minutes, which, the on-offs with Jokic has always been a big stat that everybody likes to bring up. So they bring in a veteran point guard and hoping that somebody who's going to run the offense through, somebody who can bring in some spark off the bench. But I guess the results in LA were not telling enough. A lot of season left, but the spark that he's supposed to bring off the bench to help reignite the offense, to improve some of the on-offs that are sort of like built into the Nuggets. It seems when Jokic is playing versus not playing, it's just not working out. He's been too inefficient, missing too many shots. It's not too surprising that there's a little bit of hitch in this team's giddy up, just because the roster has thinned out from the guys who have won a ring with them just a few years ago. So, but yeah, no, it's going about as poorly as we hoped it wouldn't. Rather,
I guess I might have to go and instigate with that egg on X that I thought was him last year or the year before. So we'll see if that might spark something. I'll get on that. Next thing I wanted to touch on, kind of a two-parter, and it's one of the guys that I bag on the most. James Harden actually is leading the league in assists right now with 11.7 a game, which for me, I have to say that's very impressive. I know he sometimes has these kind of streaks where he distributes the ball versus just dribbling it, as far as I usually notice. But the one thing I wanted to touch on was this Clipper wall, and it's something I think could change the way that maybe new arenas are built in the future. But the Clippers have this wall that I think the Suns have said was distracting. I know KD missed a couple of free throws. Booker said he missed one and he usually doesn't and was really pissed about it. So what are your thoughts on the Clippers? I think, what are they? I don't have the standings up in front of me, but I think they were actually doing fairly decent. I thought maybe 2-0 right now.
yeah, the Clippers are looking really solid to start the season.
Even
A lot
without
of credit to, yeah, even without Kawhi. I mean, they're rolling with what they have, and kind of, I do. They're making us seem anyway like we're underappreciating what they do have, but certainly James Harden is looking a little bit like James Harden of old. I'll give him like 90% of James Harden of old. Hopefully that's sustainable. Really, tons of credit to Norm Powell. I think he's been the X factor in all of this. He just seems like a scoring machine right now. I don't know about all this wall stuff. We'll see. Supposedly, it's more distracting than any other fan experience on free throws that there has been.
Hey, if you can get 1 or 2 points away from somebody at the line, I think that could be 1 or 2 games and that could mean not being in the play-in tournament or getting into the play-in tournament. So I think it's going to have an effect, whether if it's minimal or if we can somehow put a quantitative amount on it. I don't know, but I think it's funny because you see, granted, I'm on social, so I see all kinds of behind the court distractions, and some of them work. And this one I think is $2 billion worth of trying to distract the opponent. So I think it's something that we have to keep an eye on for the upcoming year. So it's curious, and I'm thinking other teams might start trying to figure out other ways to implement some sort of distraction, not like Colts or Vikings, like piping in noise or something in the arena. But even though I think all NBA stadiums, it's loud the entire game, even while they're playing. So I don't think that's an issue. So, but no, definitely something curious and interesting, and we'll see how it goes. The last thing for fast break news I want to touch on, and it's something I had you discover right before we came on the show, which I think it's probably the story of the week, is this D Wade statue. They unveiled this new statue outside the Miami arena, and it doesn't quite look like him. I'm going to put some images here, so maybe you'll be able to see it while we're talking. But yeah, Bobby, what are your thoughts on it? What have you seen and what do you think?
I'm glad you opened my eyes to this. As you know, I basically live under a rock, so that's not something I would have been able to discover on my own. But what gets me is the part where they have photographic evidence of him seeing the face of the statue and approving it before they unveiled it to the rest of the Miami fans. Is D Wade just that polite of a person? I mean, this thing is miserable. How did nobody along the way say no, that's not the statue?
Or pick a different facial feature or like facial action versus like it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I think they're getting the memes of like it looks like Morpheus from the Matrix or Thanos when he's about to die.
I think you mean Morpheus from the Mummy. That's a better description. Yeah. I mean, he looks. I mean, it looks like a sci-fi villain. It doesn't even look human.
Like from the neck down, it looks like him, but yeah, that head just does not look right. Want to know what are your guys' thoughts? Let us know. That's fast break news.
Y'all got videos, photos? Like, that's crazy. I can't believe that. Who is that guy?
First week of basketball has been unbelievable, and it's good to be back. To just get in there, I have to say I probably have watched more basketball in this last week than I did probably in the whole first half of last season. And I'm into it now. I know that the Timberwolves are good, so I'm already on the bandwagon and ready to go. So this is not the Timberwolves of old. So, but let's start out east. In your old hometown, what are your takeaways from the 76ers, kind of the new look Sixers with Paul George there?
I don't know that I'd call it my hometown, more my pit stop town, but I did live there for a little bit.
It was your
Yeah,
home for a while.
as you mentioned, I can never claim to be a true Philly homeboy.
You're too nice.
Those people, maybe that's it. Yeah. But I did drink the Kool-Aid for a little bit. But anyway, I think the big story about Philly right now is their supporting cast, which might be the only story because there's a good chance I feel like that we're never going to see Embiid or Paul George play at this rate. But they're giving me a lot of reassurance for the rest of this team. First few games they're 1-2, granted, but they've been extremely competitive games. Maxi's doing his thing. He has a very linear style of play that's predicated upon speed. So I just can't see him as like a number one option. But he dropped a 40+ point game the other night. Fairly efficient as well. And what I'm seeing a lot more is the Caleb Martins and the Kelly Oubres really doing their part out there. The Yabuselis, I mean, sincerely, he's coming out looking like the guy that we saw during the Olympics. So I feel like once the Sixers were truly at full strength, I was a doubter. Again, for the same purposes here that we're talking about, this longevity issue of being able to get their whole team being healthy and playing consistently for the season, because the continuity is important. But yeah, I mean, I feel like once we see them at full strength, they're going to be heck of a force to be reckoned with. We know that their offseason was good. We want to see it all come together in a consistent, cohesive manner, and the consistency is going to be the key there. Maybe PG and Embiid getting like 50 or so games in is all they're going to need to be a dominant team. But they are going to be throwing a lot of potential victories away by relying so heavily on the rest of that squad. If you're looking at the guys who have actually played thus far, you think of them going into the season as a potential play-in team. So, if you're sure, maybe you're winning 70% of the games when you got the full squad out there. But if you're only winning 40% of your games, 30% of your games, the rest of the guys, the amount of games that you're going to drop as a result of that is going to potentially put you in a very uncomfortable position at the end of the year where you're trying to avoid the play-in.
Yeah. Well, and they are 1-2, so they've lost to the Bucks and the Sixers, and then beat the Pacers, or the Bucks and the Raptors, excuse me, and lost and beat the Pacers in overtime. So, but they're scoring. That's the thing. These are high scoring games for them. So I guess that's what I think you're kind of trying to get at, is that they are getting points up even without their two main people in. But I'm going to take as I've said before, to at least you, being the Charles Barkley of the show, why aren't these guys like, okay, Paul George, I can kind of understand, but the way that they've set up of saying like that Embiid's not going to do back-to-backs, is it more so like he's just going to fall apart? He's going to turn into Greg Oden if he starts doing these back-to-backs or playing more games? Like, why can't he be able to play more? Like, I just don't understand. Do they just think that it's just he'll fall off and won't be around in the playoffs? Or is it just, to me, it's like, I don't understand saying at the beginning of the year that you're not going to play back-to-backs. Even if you feel good, they're going to say no. Like, to me, like, why is that? I get preserving the contract and all of that BS, but to me, it's like, as the cliche thing to say is, you're making these millions of dollars. Why can't you put aside 5-10 million of that to go towards your body versus LeBron's 1 million and making sure that you're healthy? Like, I don't understand why these guys. Yes, maybe it's the old school mentality that I have of, you should be able to play as many games as you can. If you're able to walk and run out on the floor and you're not actually injured, you should be playing. So, it's, which is why I harp on like Kawhi's load management and stuff like that. But obviously he's out again. So it's like, is it one of those where, with him taking so many breaks and doing the load management, that his body is kind of up and down and doesn't get into a natural flow, where if you're playing every night, your body's going to know, like, all right, this is what's coming, versus I'm going to take 3 days off and then try to do it again. To me, that every time that I would do that kind of thing with working out, like, those are the times you get injured, is because it's not a consistent flow state as far as the way your body works. But enough of my rant. What do you have any idea why that's the case?
No, I mean, it's a great perspective. It's certainly, it's a double-edged sword. If you're doing a lot of high impact physical activity, you're going to potentially increase the risk of injury. But if you're not doing appropriate conditioning to then be able to do this high impact endurance activity, then you're going to get injured. So, I mean, a good example is like the Knicks displayed for us last year that, oh, no, guys can play full seasons and 40 plus minutes and play their hearts out, all the way through the playoffs. Certainly there's a risk of fatigue. Yeah. I mean, certainly there's a risk of fatigue there, which we were starting to see with the Knicks a little bit at the end of last year, especially into the playoffs. But they're not dealing with rather they're not dealing with the theme of injuries that the Sixers are. Paul George, I'm with you there. I mean, I think he actually has, an injury that requires a little bit of rest at this point. But the Sixers are essentially just steering way into the skid of, we are going to allow ourselves to get fined for sitting this guy out. The only thing that may prevent that is, I mean, I guess technically for players, according to the rules, for players with a history of complex injuries, you're not going to get dinged as much. But I know that there's going to be a very large lens being placed on this organization, especially for these televised games.
Yeah. To me, like you said, it goes to the point of, if there are 449 other players, are we putting them all at 70%? Like, you're only going to play 70% of games because we're worried about your conditioning. To me, it's like, why is it these specific guys that are like just injury prone, and yet you keep them on your roster? And yes, I understand Embiid's a fabulous player, but why wouldn't you want to maximize? Like, even if you only played 45 games, I'd want him in those first 45 games, just like, let him go. Like, to me, it's, you play till you're injured, and then you're injured, you rehab and you get better, instead of like prepping yourself for like being worried about an injury flaring up. Like, and I guess I'm not in his body. I'm not 7 foot, like carrying close to 300 pounds. So who knows the amount of pressure that goes through that body, and the impact of just taking a step or jumping and coming down. It's like, I get it. I've torn both Achilles and I'm under 200 pounds. So to me, thankfully, knock on wood, humble brag. But to me, that's just, there's so many, like Jokic, how many games has he played in a row? To me, I get that. And he's one of those guys that gets hammered. Like, no one gets hit as much as him since Shaq, as far as I'm concerned. So to me, it's like, if Jokic can make it through, how many games has he missed in the last 4 or 5 years? It's probably under 20. So to me, like, if there are these big bodied guys, like, I don't get it. And obviously we probably can move on, because we're just going to keep saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, I don't know if there's any true objective way to measure which players have, a level of conditioning or a body that's going to be able to sustain, this amount of playing time. Especially if they're a starting level player, can they handle these kind of minutes for a full season? Which you can debate whether or not the season is too long. I have my own opinions on that. And then into the playoffs as well. It's certainly a lot, but there has to be the appropriate amount of conditioning for these moments. Otherwise,
You're an
you just,
athlete.
I mean, yeah. Otherwise, you're just going to keep getting hurt. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where you just have to play it out and let the results speak for itself. And eventually there's going to be a pattern. I am curious to see in years to come for players like the Embiids and the Kawhis of the NBA if they're going to be valued differently in the future, or or maybe it's just one of those things where this is a generational player. This is somebody who can take you to the promised land. We're going to pay you and roll the dice every single time, because if it does hit, then it was worth it. So,
yeah. I had a point for a second and I lost it. Let's see if I can. Oh crap! What was it? Oh. So my thought is, and we'll say this is the last comment on the Embiid injury. But to me, would you see this in any other sport? I guarantee you anybody in the NHL would laugh at this. Like football, not going to happen. Baseball, maybe, but I feel like those guys might be a little tougher than basketball players, just in general. But to me, it's like this doesn't happen in other sports. No one is like prepping or being cautious of an injury. Like maybe Shohei Ohtani or I probably already messed up. I need like not a swear jar, but like a mispronunciation jar. Even
I think that I don't know. I think you nailed it.
But Ohtani, like he had Tommy John, so thus he's not pitching, or he didn't pitch this year. And I think he's planning on pitching next year. But who knows? They're in the World Series, so maybe not. But this isn't a baseball podcast. But to me, I don't see it in other sports. To me, it's with NHL and basketball going at the same time. To me, it's just laughable. Like you watch a hockey game, this guy busts his tooth, black guy gets slashed, and he wraps it up and he's back in for the third period. So to me, it's like, I don't want to say toughen up Embiid, because that's not what I'm trying to say. Obviously, he's got an issue and he's trying to work through it, but it's just
for the record, I certainly don't want to question the toughness of any basketball players and NBA players, because we have plenty of counter examples as well. And I'm sure there's plenty of guys who play through chronic injuries and soreness that we just don't even know about.
Yes,
they're still making highlights.
I am a basketball player, so to me it's more of, I don't see basketball players throwing small hard objects at the other team when they're upset. Like it's just that, to me, that's a different toughness. Like to take a pitch, get hit and get beamed is a little bit different than taking a tough charge or something like that. So any case, next up we had our Clippers, and you had already kind of mentioned Norm Powell, and you have here DJJ, which I am unsure of who that is, so you're gonna have to let me know. Derek Johnson Jr.
Derek Jones Jr. But no, I mean, those are just a couple examples of what's making the Clippers tick these days. I mean, Zubac has had his own set of
leading the league in rebounds.
His own set of sturdiness. I mean, certainly he likes playing alongside a great pick and roll partner like James Harden. But as we mentioned, Harden is starting to look a little bit like the Harden of old. We'll see if this is sustainable. I mean, if it is, the guy's an all NBA player this year. That's what we've seen so far. Maybe not the most efficient shooter, but Norm Powell being just like the perfect shooting guard to Harden's point guard right now. He is lighting it up out there. He was certainly making it very difficult for the Nuggets with their previous game. And yeah, I mean, if they can keep this up, then I think they're going to prove a lot of haters wrong this season.
And then you'll get to see plenty of that wall.
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, Derek Jones Jr. does deserve a little bit of a better shout out. That's he's a guy, I forget how young he is. I believe he's 27 or 28. I feel like we've been watching him for so long that that Heat era that he played for, it just seems like forever ago.
He's been on like at least 3 teams, right?
Yeah. He's he certainly had a stint with the Bulls. Once again, a player who leaves the Bulls and then hits their prime afterwards. We kind of saw him honestly transform with the Mavs. I'm sure the Mavs would have loved to hang on to Derek Jones Jr. I just think with the cast that they had and then acquiring Clay, they couldn't make it happen. But yeah, I mean, he's just, this is a continuation of what we were seeing last season. Traditionally, he just kind of seems like a jump out of the gym highlight reel kind of guy, but he's really transforming into somebody who is learning how to use his athleticism and his length. Even being a slight guy, you see him take down some big rebounds. You see him challenge guys at the rim. You see him kind of sneak behind in the dunker spot and just waiting for those opportune moments. And then on top of it, I mean, he's hitting big threes. He had a couple in the most recent game that were rather impressive and big moments. So really like what I'm considering, or what I'm continuing to see from Derek Jones Jr. Excited to tune into more Clippers. I can't believe I'm saying excited to turn into more Clippers game moving forward.
I guess the last thing I'll ask is, how's their defense? Is Harden going to play defense? I feel like Derek Jones Jr. was at least a semi-decent defender, and I feel like Norm Powell was a pretty good one. So I guess and Zubac is at least solid down in the interior. How is their defense looking? I think that's one thing that I always, especially with Harden, like, yes, he is a great offensive player, but my knock on him forever is that he put zero effort in on the defensive end. So I think that's where and for me, being the only thing that I was good at was defense, when I see somebody just not trying is when I want to just bag on them. And so that's why I've never been a fan of him. Yeah, like I said, he's a great shooter, and that's one thing. Give the guy the ball in his hands. But I would, not me, but if I was an NBA player, I think I'd be kind of licking my chops if I saw Harden in front of me.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly not going to make a strong defensive argument for them. Not that they haven't come out, looking okay. I mean, they're going to rely on the Derek Jones Juniors, the Zubac's, the Terrence Manns of their team to play, and I mean, not to mention the long arms of Nick Batum to really fill in the gaps there for the defense. Because I mean, I would not think of Powell or Harden as a strong defensive backcourt. It's certainly going to be the big test for them. I mean, I think in general, in order to keep their backcourt as the mainstay of their offense, that's suspect to fade over time, especially with an aging Harden. So is this something that we're going to see for the full season? I don't know, but so far they're having big wins against big teams. We mentioned the Nuggets as well as the Warriors, and I mean they have been taking control of these games. So keeping it convincing. Maybe they'll continue to do the same moving forward.
Let's move up the coast. We've got the Warriors that we want to kind of dive into. We've got, like you just mentioned, they kind of had that issue, or they lost to the Clippers, having a few too many turnovers. We got Steph hurt, but the question I wanted to start off with is, how is Slow-Mo doing?
I mean, Slow-Mo's looking all right out there. I can't pretend that I've watched too many Slow-Mo minutes. At least that's not what I've been focusing on. It's been hard to focus on Slow-Mo when you have the likes of Buddy Hield lighting it up out there. Maybe not so much in the most recent game where everybody was shooting really flat for the Warriors. I think I would like to see a little bit more from Kuminga than we have thus far. They've essentially, the starting five that they go out there with is just coming up with nothing early in the first quarter, and they're having to sort of claw their way back, which is kind of like Warriors of old. But I would say in general, they're a deep team, and they certainly look like it. It seems like they're rolling out a new weapon every 5 seconds. We know Steve Kerr is not afraid to create a number of lineups for them. I would like them to see them continue to be like a bigger 3-point shooting team like we saw in the preseason. I mean, obviously preseason, regular season, two very different beasts. It is unfortunate that we are already seeing a Steph injury early on. Luckily, it's a minor one. But being reevaluated on Friday doesn't necessarily mean coming back to play, thereafter, because they have the back-to-back coming up against the Pelicans, both at home. And then they have a Saturday game, I believe, against Houston. I would honestly, I'd be happy to see him, but I would be surprised if he does, in fact, play in that game. And as we've talked about a number of times, it only takes a few games to really fall out of the West in the standings. But, I do the sort of like depth in like the 3-4 position that you see with this team. It does kind of remind me of the We Believe Warriors. It does remind me of like Iguodala and Sean Livingston, and just a seemingly endless sea of people with like a 7'2" reach, being able to do a little bit everything on the defensive end. So, so far, very fun team to watch.
Do you think they're missing Klay Thompson, at least right now, especially with that Steph injury? I think is that something that, like you said, they haven't found their footing. They would have that if Klay was there. And so it's like you said, it's if Wiggins or Healed or Draymond's not going to lead the team in scoring. So, and Kuminga. So it's like one of those three, aside from Draymond, like has to come out and actually be the dominant scorer. Whereas if Klay was there, he would probably step up and be the guy. Like we would know, okay, this is the guy that's going to lead the team. So I think maybe it's kind of a good thing for them not to have Steph, to kind of force some new leadership, kind of that sometimes it's always, you find that positive from a negative of who's going to step up in his role and hopefully continue on kind of that play as it goes. So do you think they're missing Klay?
I'm sure they're missing him a little bit, but as I mentioned, Buddy Hield thus far really benefited from Steph's gravity. I know that that's a phrase people are sick of hearing, but I mean, his presence on the court can only be explained in universal celestial terms, just because it really has that much of a pull. I mean, Buddy Hield, I think, is getting some of the best looks he's ever had in his career. I think the same is true for the Anthony Melton. And then, every year for the past couple of years, there's been a big question mark on Andrew Wiggins, and everybody will say
every year.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's funny because he, you don't have to answer to anything when you win a championship, and that's kind of what happened with Wiggins. He was voted in an all-star starter, which was very debatable, but then thereafter they won a ring. And so then everybody keeps coming back to like, when are we going to see Wiggins from, was it 2022? When are we going to see 2022 Wiggins? And lately that's been lacking, and he has really looked like Wiggins of old. But so far this year, he's come out really strong, really confident. Shots looking great. I don't know if that's going to be able to carry out for the whole year. Obviously, everything seems to deviate towards the mean. But yeah, this guy came to ball, and even after Curry got hurt, the Warriors did hang in the game with the Clippers for a bit, in large part just because Wiggins was able to carry that offense. So I think with what they have, they're able to fill in the gaps enough. And with what they're lacking with Klay, and adding certainly a whole nother layer of versatility with the defensive backcourt options that they have now.
Well, let's jump over to the East. Let's go a little north of me. Milwaukee. We got Dame Dalla and Giannis with losses to the Bulls and the Nets seeming a bit worrisome.
Game 1 for sure. Dame came out looking really solid, looking like the Damian Lillard that we know well. He is firing away, and he is not hesitating on the shots. There seemed to be like an absence of confidence last year. New place, new scheme. He's not the number one option anymore. I think he's kind of brought that same energy with the games that followed, but just not the same efficiency. So I do think that he is going to still keep having to work on the 2-man game with Giannis, because there's a lot of possessions where they come down and he shoots the quick 3, which they don't necessarily need him to do as often as he's doing right now. So I don't know. Maybe that's a part of their scheme. Maybe coach told them to just fire away. But yeah, I mean those 2 losses that they've had against the hapless Bulls and the tanking Nets are a little bit concerning this early on. As we're recording, they also lost to the Celtics, so that is causing them to start the season 1-3 with their mere win against the 76ers team, who we've already talked about, who are essentially out their 2 best players. So I have liked what I've seen from the rest of their cast as well. I feel like so much of this episode today is just talking about the supporting cast. But as I was going to say, what was I going to say? Yeah, no. So I like what I'm seeing from Gary Trent Jr. I think he's doing his job thus far. Torian Prince has looked all right for them. And then the other wing that they picked up, DeLon Wright, has looked solid. I think once they get some flow going, they're going to look like a better squad. But Dame is definitely looking like a better player than he was last year already. Hopefully that starts to translate into some wins. Got to see it play out. I would love to see more flow between Giannis and Dame on offense, which is just not quite come to fruition yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take the drive up to go to the Pfizer Forum and see what's going on up there.
There you go.
Well, let's talk about my hometown team. They came out of the gates. All 3 games, I have to say, I've been happy with the way that they've played. They lost to the Lakers. They beat the Kings in a very close, tight game. And then they beat the Raptors this past weekend. That one, it was essentially a blowout, and then the Raptors kind of came back and made it close. So yeah, it's been an interesting start to the season. I think I've been happy with what I'm seeing. I think Ant is obviously he's being him. It's been a really fun to see Julius Randle essentially kind of mesh into this team, and it was one of those things where watching one of the post-game interviews where I think it was Ant was saying, he told Julius, we will fit around you. Don't worry about trying to fit with us. And I think hearing that from the star player and knowing okay, I think it just takes a lot of pressure off of him. He just seems happy. Like I mentioned before, he's not in LA or New York. He's dealing with Minneapolis media who's not going to be begging on him. The whole state of Minnesota, I think, is already in love with him and Dante. It's been really fun to see him and Naz Reid come off the bench, and still knowing all the other players that the Wolves have on the bench it's been very very upbeat here when I start watching the T-Wolves play. Being from Minnesota, it's hard to have those expectations and getting excited just because we know no matter what, the floor will open up on us and at some point. But I do have to give a shout out to Jim Pete, the T-Wolves color analyst. One of the games, I think it was the Raptor game, I was just getting upset with Gobert. And it's one of those things where no wonder France only played him for 5 minutes, whatever one of those games was, just because I want to scream at the television or my computer whenever he's on offense. but then on defense, he makes up for it for me. And there was a few times I was like, I just couldn't see it, but I needed like Jim Pete to break it down for me a little bit more. But his ability to essentially like guard two or 1.5 people at one time while being down in the post is it's ridiculous. His ability to kind of cover on the pick and roll and just being a defensive presence down low. So I'm getting over my Gobert ickiness that I kind of have had since we acquired him, and especially before the season started, and seeing that they re-signed him to like a big deal. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We'll see what this is going to be. But I'm being open-minded. He can improve his offensive game through the year, but he's a tremendous asset on the defensive end, especially when you have Anthony Edwards and his energy trying to guard whoever the top player is in the other team to go along with Jaden McDaniels. So those two wings, it's just so fun to watch. When DiVincenzo gets out there, he at least kind of brings that same energy. He might not be as top of a defender, but I think Chris Finch will kind of tweak his game, and we'll see him get a lot better on the defensive end. But obviously he played with Tibbs, so I'm not too worried about him. But it's fun when Naz Reid, DiVincenzo, Ant, and was it Jaden McDaniels, those guys on the floor, it's fun to watch them go up and down the court. They can kind of guard anybody, and I think that's what makes them so good defensively. Watching starting five, they were talking about last year's game against the Nuggets. It's like switch. We're going to switch on everything, and it's such a great thing to fall back on, to know like everybody can guard everybody on the other team. And so it's been really fun to watch them. Anthony Edwards is obviously taken so many notes from Steph and KD from the Olympics, and his shooting beyond the arc has been, granted, he's never been afraid to shoot, but it's been fun watching him take confident shots and hitting them. And he's making a lot more than he's missing. So, and the ones that he does miss they're not quick transition shots. It's ones where the ball's been moved around, he's open, and he takes the shot and he might miss. I don't think I've seen him take like a bad shot. His decision-making has gotten so much better. And again, I attribute that to the Olympics. When you're around the best players, you start picking up little teeny tidbits of things to do. And he was on KD's hip the entire time. So to me, like, as much as he could absorb and take away from them, I'm already seeing it kind of translate into this season, which gets me excited. Tomorrow night, they take on the Mavs and then the Nuggets this weekend. So it's a good test here coming up, especially too after the Lakers and Kings. Those were two really good games. So they're getting battle tested early, which I'm happy about. So I think this is hopefully we got lots of good things, and we stay under the radar as long as we can, as long as they can. I'm not on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I wish I haven't been able to watch as much of the T-Wolves as I would have liked.
That's
but
right.
Yeah,
I'll take the T-Wolves. You get the rest of the league.
You basically be our T-Wolves beat writer this year. No, but I mean their sole loss came up against a red hot Lakers.
They look so good.
who had an outstanding game. So I was giving Julius Randle a little bit of flack in that game, but thereafter, he's shown, oh yeah, like that guy, he actually knows how to play basketball. It turns out that gentleman is pretty good at basketball. So they're finding their groove quickly. It seems like the rest of the team just really hasn't skipped a beat. DiVincenzo is far and away. I presume that he will do it more efficiently as the rest of the season carries on. That'll be a big boost for them as well. Gobert, he is a polarizing player, and he just notoriously gets like so much flack for being a guy who's so good at one thing and so bad at everything else. But I genuinely, I second what you said. The only way to make him a non-factor is to pull him out of the paint, make a threat for him to have to follow, away from the basket. Luka was able to work that magic last year during the Western Conference Finals. Not to rub dirt in that wound, but yeah. Otherwise, he is just a sturdy force, no question about it.
Yeah. And speaking of that first game, like I mentioned, the Lakers, they've been hot. Like AD leading the league in scoring. I know the guy that you're a big fan of, and Dalton K. I'll just say K. It's Connect. I'm going to say like a Lego set.
Just remember, connects. Yeah.
Like okay, good. I was going to say like the Lego set, but I was like, that's probably wrong. So at least I got.
It's just one Connect. You didn't get the whole set. You just got one Connect.
Okay. Well, at least I got one name right, so that's good. But no, they look good. I mentioned to you earlier, the one thing that I kind of have been hearing from a lot of former players, not that they're calling me, but I'm watching on social media and their podcast talking about, is that the last few years, Laker coaches usually are buddying up to LeBron just because they want to last and don't want to get fired. But it appears, and granted, we are only 3 or 4 games into the season, but it appears that JJ Redick is going to coach up LeBron, and this is his team, and LeBron is just another player on the team. And he's making a point of making AD the focal point of the team, which I think should have been done probably 3 or 4 years ago. Because if you're going to have LeBron as a supporting player, which is crazy to think of, but obviously AD is younger, bigger, and I don't want to say he's a better player, but I think he's a better all-around player right now, just because of his versatility down low. He can guard more people, but this team they're firing all cylinders right now, and we'll see how that kind of goes. It's the first time in a while that, and granted, obviously we're very early, that a LeBron team looks good in the first half of the year. And like I said, we'll see how the rest of this goes, because it seems like last few years, whatever team LeBron's on is a buyer at the trade deadline. So I'm definitely curious to see where this goes. NBA is always good when Lakers are good, so I think that can kind of contribute to more eyes on the sport. But yeah, Lakers, what do you got?
It's tough to say it better than you did. I mean, JJ did declare going into the season that there were some elements of AD's game that he really wanted to unlock, including his jump shot. So I mean, it's certainly starting to show. I don't know if it's just a change in scheme, boosted confidence, but Anthony Davis was one of those players that so many people were trying to make an MVP prediction on during his early prime years, because we were just waiting for that next big level up from what we were seeing in New Orleans, and then it just never seemed to come. I mean, granted, the guy won a ring, and everybody talks about bubble AD, just being the spectacular player that we've been looking for once again. Not to say that he hasn't been, a defensive player of the year candidate every year, consistently, 22 and 12 kind of guy. But yeah, no, putting him as the centerpiece of the offense, I think has made a big difference for the Lakers thus far this year. We'll see how things continue to go. Not to take any credit away from LeBron, especially after he lit it up against Sacramento. Gosh, he made their defense just look awful. There are some fears with the Kings just really surfacing early on. I mean, and it's not. I can't point to one particular guy. I mean, even a guy who I give a lot of credit to, Domantas Sabonis, just so many failed rotations, easy looking buckets for the Lakers during that game. But they've kind of been putting hurt on everybody thus far. So maybe I won't focus on that.
I'll push back a little bit. The Kings looked good defensively against the Wolves. I think obviously Lakers have much different pieces that can attack differently. It's funny, again, watching the starting five, that a stat that surprised me was the Pelicans swept the Kings last year 5 games. The Pelicans. And so, and like I think, and they even knocked him out of the playoffs too. So it might have been 6. So to me, this team it's a very streaky team at times, and obviously that's not what you want in the NBA. You want to have some consistency, but they, like I said, they barely lost to the Timberwolves. That 3 rimmed. That ball went right around the rim, but they definitely had some stops and some key moments to get that game close. But again, I didn't watch the Laker game, so I can't agree with what you were just saying and like the way that LeBron and AD might have tore them up. But no, I will be curious to see how this goes. They are, like, on paper, I want to say that they're a playoff team, but I don't know. Again, they're falling through some pitfalls right now to start the season. So we'll see if they can figure it out and get things back on track. As I'm a big De'Aaron Fox fan, and after watching starting 5 and I don't know why I always thought it. I think it was a cousin or nephew. Is kind of, I didn't realize that he was Arvydas Sabonis's son, who I was a big fan of back in the day. It was just one of those, you're like, this guy, big guy's shooting threes. I think he was like one of the first ones that I was like, the guy's 7 foot and he just made like 3 threes in this game. This doesn't make any sense.
7'4", 7'4".
Yeah, sorry, over 7 foot. It was just one of those things. I was like, it just didn't make sense, but it looked like a normal shot. And so I think ever since then, that Sabonis has been stuck in my brain. And his son is a really talented player, went on a run last year, triple doubles. And we'll see if he can kind of come back to form. Because that was the only thing he might have had a semi-decent stat line, but he didn't jump out of the screen the way that I was expecting him to. And that was a little disappointing when your star player just doesn't show. Like, he showed, but it wasn't somebody that I was like, oh, there he is making a play. It was just kind of natural flow of the game stuff. So Kings are a curious one to see. I feel like they'll be in that play-in area again, and if not, maybe falling off just because the West is so deep. And especially if the Lakers are rising too, and the Clippers. All right, let's move back over to the East and talk about the Cavs. What are your thoughts on? I was going to say a name from the 90s. How's Katino Mobley doing with the Cavs?
I think there's some relation there, right?
I have no idea.
I think that's his son. No.
I'll do some research and we'll find that out.
Anyway,
but the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, the Cavs. As we're talking, they are now 4-0. Came up very strong. I was really high on them going into the season when we did our over-unders. You took a strong under on my over.
You took an over on the Pistons.
I stand by it. A lot of games left.
At the knees.
A lot of games left. I think the big thing is that Evan Mobley has been looking really strong, really aggressive, which is what we're hoping to see. I don't agree with the notion that he has to be the best player on the team for them to be awesome, but I think that's discrediting Donovan Mitchell too much. One player on that team has scored 70 points before in a game, and it's never going to be the name Evan Mobley. So, yeah, I mean, the Twin Towers continues. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep that team together the entirety of the season without seeing some major downs to go with these ups. But right now, look at a solid, cohesive unit. And it shows as they are joining the Celtics here at the top of the East. So I can't say too much on them just yet. I definitely need to delve into more Cavaliers minutes, really, in order to speak knowledgeably on them, but yeah, so far they are one of the teams to watch in the East.
And then we can move a little farther south, and the team we talked about last time, the Memphis Grizzlies. And so I think you were super high on Zach Edey, and he's looked like a rookie. And what about the rest of the team?
I mean, I would say, I'd say Ja looks phenomenal. Honestly, the big thing I wanted to talk about was Edie, essentially, as you mentioned, looking like a rookie. I mean, that guy, for being as big as he is really getting pushed around, and you can tell it's bothering him. I mean, the big thing is he can't stay on the floor just because he's getting into foul trouble, over and over and over again. So I think in tonight's game, I haven't had a chance to delve in too much, but I think he was actually able to play some meaningful minutes. But yeah, I mean, by and large, I think the team looks great. Ja's being Ja, he looks like he hasn't missed a beat. If hopefully you guys can still hear this. I'm getting nothing but frozen Ronnie on my end. But it's funny, as we're speaking, they also lost to the Bulls. Maybe the Bulls are a team to watch, considering some of the powerhouses that they have wins against so far. But yeah, I mean, it was a close one against the Jazz, and then a more convincing win against the Magic thus far. But yeah, I'm still going to be tuning into them. I'm still excited to see how they progress throughout the rest of the season. That's all I can say on the Grizzlies for now. Sorry, that's not true. One thing I have forgotten to mention is your boy Aldama looking like a stud. He has played some really key minutes for them, coming off the bench, being like their stretch five guy. I mean, I thought maybe you were a little bit too high on them going into the season, but wow, has he turned out to be like the X factor for that team? He's filling the gaps that we're hoping Zach Edey to live up to at some point. Maybe not as a 3-point shooter, but yeah, he has been a key piece for them thus far.
Yeah, he just looked versatile, and I think that's just like Avosele. I think just their ability to fit and just find the right spots. They just always manage to be open in a corner for a three or getting the rebound that was needed. It's just they make timely pieces to help a team get little edges everywhere. I think that's it's little victories, whether it's a hustle down a ball, just making a good pass. I think it's those little things. And that was something I just noticed with him. He has like a really smooth shot from the corner. And yeah, I just remember he jumped out at me. But yeah, speaking on the Bulls, it was one of the things I don't know if we were going to break them down at all, but I think having Levine back and having Lonzo Ball back is a major factor. I think having them together with the rest of this team that they've kind of compiled, it feels like Frankenstein of parts. Like every time somebody shows me, there was one picture I saw was, I think the Bulls starting roster for like the last preseason game. And it was like, this looks like actors who are playing NBA players for an upcoming like Hallmark movie. And they don't look like players, but maybe that's the new thing. And having some of these old vets back, healthy, and obviously I haven't been able to see a Bulls game, but obviously the clips that I see, to me, having those two guys on the floor, it provides speed. Obviously Lonzo's a great passer and distributor of the ball. I wouldn't say either of them are very good defensively, but they definitely bring a spark on the offensive end. And just because I think he has he's the guy that I will always root for, but I think will always underperform. He has such great potential to be a great player, but I think he just probably won't get there. But yeah, at least I think they'll be fun. But yeah, we'll see how Chicago pans out.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly what formula they're using that seems to be working thus far. As I mentioned, a couple big wins for them so far. I don't think that they've had necessarily the easiest schedule. Um, I, if I had to point to one thing, it's just that they are kind of like a younger, athletic, floor spacing team, and now they have an orchestrator back finally with Josh Giddey. Lonzo's been playing good minutes for them off the bench, which any team would be lucky to be saying that, right? Anybody would love to say, yeah, a sturdy Lonzo Ball is our backup point guard right now. So that's certainly not hurting. They've had big scoring games from not just Levine but Kobe White.
He seems in a much mature point in his career right now. I think this is his third season. I want to say third or fourth. And
Kobe White.
Yeah, I think he's kind of coming into his own. I think that's he seems to be of it. What's weird, kind of like a locker room leader. So maybe doesn't translate onto the court, but of the clips that I'm seeing kind of behind the scenes and some of the other stuffs, he's making a presence of himself within this team in more ways than one.
Yeah. So it's his sixth season in the NBA.
I'll stay here.
I think that's just one thing that happens when you get older is any sense of time for how long these guys have been playing seems to be either significant inflated or deflated. But yeah, he was definitely an exciting guy coming out of North Carolina, who's really just coming to his game at this point. He's not like a high flying kind of player, but he's such a slick shooter, and he moves well with the Bulls in transition. So, yeah, keep letting him fly. He has the green light right now to be their second shooting guard on their starting lineup. I don't know how else to describe it. The Bulls are just like every year after year, they're just like a collection of shooting guards. You can call DeMar DeRozan whatever position you want to call him. The guy's a shooting guard. He's a four in a shooting guard's body. But but yeah, again, this is another squad that it seems like we might need to tune into a little bit closer. They're putting together some really exciting games. I'm gonna have to watch them on the eve of Halloween versus the Magic. I think that'll be a good game. Always a little bit of a revenge game just because of the Vooch trade, which is kind of silly. But yeah, that one ought to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I plan on upgrading my league pass this week. I want to watch.
I've inspired you.
Games.
Or so I tell myself. I've inspired you.
Any other
hoping to inspire many, many more.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other points you need to make? Get it out.
Not at the moment. I think I think we're gonna have to just keep watching games and do a deep dive on some of these teams coming up. Right now, we just have really small sample size. Everything's an overreaction. Still a lot of fun, but yeah, excited to see what this next week of basketball holds.
I was gonna say we were watching live. Was it Paulo? I'll let you say the last name. Had 37 in the first half. Did the Magic end up winning that game?
They ended up winning that game. They ended up closing out in.
They were playing the Pacers.
In regulation or overtime. I'll have to double check on that one. I was very loosely following it as we were recording, but yeah, he ended up dropping 50 for the night. It was no overtime, just regulation. But yeah, it looked like they were about to lose that game, and then they ended up squeaking out at the end there. So I might have to go back and watch a lot of the highlights.
I think the Magic will be an intriguing team, and maybe we'll cover them next time.
There you go.
We'll do the state of Florida next time. We didn't say anything about the Heat either.
just all Florida. All right, sounds good. All right, folks. Well, as always, thank you for tuning in. All listens are good listens. Very, very grateful for your support thus far. We'll keep watching NBA games and letting you know what to get excited about for the future.
Yes, indeed. Let us know if there's any topics you want us to hit on. And as I've mentioned maybe a couple episodes ago, we will have guests on this. We will start talking to we do have some former college basketball players, some hopeful, some athletic trainers, and some people from some G League and some college basketball teams. We want to get some insights and share them with you rather than just us spewing our opinions on basketball, which we feel everyone should hear. That's why we're doing this. But we want to expand our reach. So stay tuned for that. And we will see you next time on the Bucket Bros. Which way I want to go?